Well, I'm probably going to be the most unique person to the stage here because this is a twist and a mix of where my background is and what I'm presently doing, and hopefully can be an asset to you guys. So, as mentioned by Jim, I ran a small or a micro branding marketing agency for 23 years. And in 2022, I saw the market was changing and I saw some image generation that was done with AI. And it let me realize that this is going to be the same thing that happened with desktop publishing back when I didn't have a beard and I had hair on my head and was learning all the design tools. And what's fascinating with this is we're in the midst of watching AI revolutionize the industry. The thing is we don't want AI to be the one that's running the program. We need to be grabbing hold of this thing and utilizing our talents, our skills to the whole process. So I've called this one AI and employer branding, or how to use AI without losing the human in employer branding. So let's go ahead and proceed with this. Okay. My question on the start of this is, are we using AI to amplify our value or to auto generate our relevance right out of existence? This is something I really wanted to point out right at the outset. And the reason is because we're seeing so many people who get on and applaud what AI can do, and they're utilizing it in a way almost as a here, do the job that I'm doing. And they're missing the opportunity to let it actually amplify the value that you bring to the table. So I'm going to continue with that thought. Okay. I did a post a couple weeks ago and it said, Meet Julie. She's a creative director still using AI like it's 2023. Okay, I introduced Julie and many resonated with her. She reflects how most of us are still using AI. And what I mean by that is what we're seeing a lot of people do with this is they go to ChatGPT and they're like, here's a problem. How would you solve it? And while that can work, there is a limitation with that approach because what we're doing is we're letting the base level results run the game. So I've got in here a comment. In a world of infinite output, creative discernment is the only mode. Gen AI isn't a shortcut, it's an amplifier. And that's actually what I want to walk through here is how we can use the tool not to replace us, but to actually amplify the things that we're doing, bring out the human element. One of my friends is Mark Schaefer, and he wrote a book called Marketing Rebellion: The Most Human Brand Wins. And that is true more than ever. Employer branding isn't about efficiency, it's about meaning. Okay, here's the thing is when we're dealing with things that we do, there's so much of it that we want to find ways to have shortcuts, to simplify the process, to find a way to not have to work as hard to get the same result or better. But this is a different place. With employer branding, we're not just looking for ways to cut out the work. I mean, yeah, we don't want to have to do things we don't have to do. But the emphasis here is going to be about the meaning that you apply to it. So as mentioned, I spent 23 years doing branding and marketing. And in that space, it wasn't about how do we find ways to cut out these things. We're trying to find a way to bring meaning to the table. So where are we now? The next several slides are just some stats on what's happening currently in the marketplace. Number one is the adoption rate is high and rising. So in 2024, 69.1% of marketers had adopted AI. And by that, they simply meant that they were using some of the tools of AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, one of these applications. And so this was up from 61.4% the previous year, and adoption is expected to climb further in 2025, and it is. It is still moving up. Okay. Even more striking is 88% of marketers already use AI in their day-to-day roles, showing it's no longer experimental, it's business as usual. 70% plus have seen AI go off script, but only 1 in 3 plan to fix oversight. Okay, think about the numbers I just showed you in relation to this. So if so many people are utilizing AI and the majority of them are seeing AI go off script, what's happening here? We're letting the AI run the show. We're letting AI have the greater impact on the things that we're doing. And this is the problem is we're leaving out the most important piece, which is the human element. So key stats on AI adoption. Number two, the advantage of going AI first. Nearly 75% of marketers feel AI gives them a competitive edge. Okay, this is an interesting statement because the question then is, what is the edge? What is it that AI is actually bringing to the table to help in this space? Over 25% say AI generated content outperforms human written content, not to scare creative people off, but to signal that performance expectations are shifting fast. I actually worked with a group of photographers, and we have a mastermind where we get together on a regular basis and we talk about the impact of AI on the industry. And one of the things that happens with this group of photographers was the fear that AI was going to replace everything that they brought to the table. So I had to have them shift their thinking and approach it from a different perspective. When you only focus on the tools that accomplish the thing that you're doing, you're missing out on what it is that sets you apart. For instance, I've got an old Canon EOS Rebel T2i, an older camera. It doesn't even allow me to sync directly with my computer anymore. I can upload the images off of it, but that camera can still take good pictures. That doesn't define the quality of the picture that I'm taking. It also doesn't define the story that I'm trying to tell with the images that I create. In the same way, the thing that's important here is the human that's driving the story that we're trying to create. AI can give you a competitive edge, but it must embody your culture, not just your capacity. Okay, so we want to utilize the competitive edge, but the thing is it shouldn't be defining and replacing it. It should be something that's amplifying what exists. Okay. Number three, ask growth across the marketing business. Forecasted spending on AI and marketing stands at 47.3 billion in 2025, with expected growth of 107.5 billion by 2028. That's 36.6%. Okay, generative AI alone is worth a staggering 62.8 billion currently in 2025, with a projected skyrocket to 365 billion by 2030. So the numbers are here to show the impact of AI playing into the game. Budgets are exploding, but attention isn't. Growth without guardrails only fuels the noise. Everybody here, if you've ever spent any time in a large language model asking a question and getting results, you can go to ChatGPT today and say, give me a marketing plan. And within seconds, it'll spit out pages and pages of information or notes. The thing is those notes are generic. They're not tied to anything in particular. So again, it's growth, but without the guardrails. What we need to do is we need to focus on the attention that we're trying to give it. So a better way to approach a large language model is to define the structure that you want it to work within. For instance, you name your business and you explain your target audience and you explain the product that you bring to market. And then from that, then you can begin having the conversations differently. The other side of that, though, is the attention. We're dealing with a market that's really saturated in noise. We don't want to just be noise. Number four, mind the gap, adoption versus governance. Over 70% of marketers have experienced AI-related mishaps. I pointed this out earlier. Hallucinations, biased or off-brand content, yet only 35% plan to invest more in governance or brand integrity oversight. 75% of marketing teams lack a concrete AI roadmap, with many missing generative AI policies, 63% of them, ethics guidelines, 60%, or even an AI council, 67%. Just a simple group of people in the company that's basically saying, okay, here's what's going on. This is how we're going to approach it. When you look at those numbers, it's pretty staggering. This thing's taking off. The problem is business as usual is not how things are running anymore. AI can publish 1,000 posts a day. Governance is what makes sure they still sound like you. I'm not advocating that we use AI to do this for us. I'm just saying we're seeing more and more of this. Everybody who's on LinkedIn has probably seen those automatic Taplio-based posts that drop onto a comment or as a comment on something you've written. And you're like, wait a second, this is so generic and it sounds bland and boring. And this is the thing is a lot of brands are handing over their brand messaging to AI to drive it. And when you're dealing with, in this case, employer branding, and you're trying to grab an audience and tell them this is a great business to work from, but you don't take the time to communicate authentically and human-like, it just is noise and you get overlooked. Again, the importance is to sound like you. It needs to be you. Number five, broader corporate usage. 78% of organizations now use AI in at least one business function. This is up from 55% just a year prior. Marketing sales are frontline adopters, especially for generative AI. So we're seeing this thing where it's all coming into play, but who's running the ship? 78% of companies use AI somewhere. The winners are those who use it where it matters, to connect with humans. Okay, so I've got a couple things I want to go through that maybe can be a use or an asset to you guys as you're working in this space of employer branding. These are really the principles by which I try to teach agencies and creative teams how to utilize AI. And the first is what I call AMP ramp. It's nice and easy to remember. Amplify, don't erase. So we're going to start with the AMP side of things. AMP or amplify. This is using AI to scale your creative voice and visibility, extending what makes you unique, not replacing it. Now there's this little Muppet version of me playing an electric guitar. The reason I put this here is because the idea of amp is like plugging in an amplifier to your electric guitar. The amplifier does not make the guitar sound better. It just makes louder what already exists. So with AI, the key that I try to push is that we're trying to amplify the human or the creative that's driving the information. Next is RAMP, using AI as a learning and skill building accelerator, helping people get sharper, faster. I've been in the education space since I was in college. And one of the things you find in education is the unique challenge of helping people to understand a tool to utilize it. Okay, so in this case, ramp. Think of here in the States, if I want to get onto an interstate, I use the ramp. And the idea of a ramp is you get on and it helps you get up to speed so that by the time you enter into the flow of traffic, you're moving. Okay, so there are places you lack information, you lack knowledge. AI can help you ramp up on those knowledge holes. It's a great agitator for helping develop the skills of the human being that's working with it. Three filters before you publish. Whenever you're working with AI and you're trying to communicate and you're just trying to basically tell the story of what you're about. This three will be a huge asset to you. Number one, does this sound like us? Does it have your voice? Now, one of the beautiful things about AI is you can train it on a lot of information. Gemini and ChatGPT both can be given a lot of information to work from that can be a basis of this is what I sound like, this is how I write, this is the kind of way I communicate. It becomes a base that it can then make sure that the voice sounds like the person that's talking. Number two, does this feel like us? Does it carry the values that's important? And number three, does this serve who we're trying to reach or your audience? And next is the Hourglass framework. This is simple. It's something I came up with a while back, but I think this can be really a helpful thing for how to work with AI. First is with an hourglass, it's got a larger section at the top and it narrows to the center. Okay. So this is going to work as what I call the sieve. First is fluff. Remove hallucinations, obvious filler, and overblown verbosity. Now, this is actually something you can train ChatGPT to work with. In other words, you say, okay, when you speak or when you communicate, I want to make sure that we don't have these kind of things, and you can have it review itself. Next is replace weak or vague phrases with sharper, more specific language. And then the third thing is cut redundancy, simplify structure, and ensure every line has purpose. Okay, so what we're doing is we're narrowing it down. We're taking out the excessive information. People are kind of done with having tons and tons to read. They want it succinct. They want it cut short. Don't do the TLDR, too long didn't read. We want to make sure that what we're giving them is valuable. So you start by removing the fluff with a sieve. Next is where we begin to add the human resonance or the tower. This is where we're going to begin adding back in. And the things we're going to add are stylistic quirks, rhythm, and tone that reflects your voice. We're going to introduce perspective and opinion. We're going to lend our authority. Now, here's what's important is sometimes I see these posts and I'm like, that was totally written by ChatGPT. It feels so inhuman. What is it that lends humanity to the things you write? It's your story. It's your personal experiences. It's your perspective. Those are things that look like and feel like human. And we're also going to cut redundancy, simplify structure, ensure every line has purpose. Now, this is kind of like we got to go back again and reread it and edit. So this is that process of the tower. We've expanded on the things that we've kind of filled in. A good approach is to use the large language models to do the research, to get the information that's key, and then from that to begin trimming it down and using these tools to really human up what we're presenting. Okay, so edit like a human, not a machine. We sieve it at the top, we cut fluff for clarity, and then we tower it at the bottom, we add human resonance. So tone, opinion, human quirks, and story. Okay, start here tomorrow. Amplify your people. AI used well isn't replacing your team, but revealing them. So with this, what I mean is hidden skills amplified. You know, all these evaluation tests and things you can take that let you kind of get a better sense of what your oddities are, your personality quirks are, the things that stand out about you. Those are things that aren't typically placed in a resume. These are basically, when you're doing a resume, it's like, here's the skills we need. We try to match it up and find people who match up with that. But when you think about the people that make up a company, they're made up of personalities, not just people who can work a particular skill. So what you want to try to do is find the hidden skills within your company and then amplify them. In other words, you could go to ChatGPT and say, I've got this guy in accounting and this is what he's really quirky about. How could that be utilized, not just to make use of him, but make use of the skills and the things that make them unique so they can actually bring that to the table. So AI lets you surface and scale skills, giving voice, visibility, and value to the talents. Ramp your team. AI is an on ramp to new talent, not a shortcut to replace it. So skills enhanced are ramped. New ways to contribute, roles expand, engagement rises, and the workplace becomes more human, not less. In other words, you've got people who are working within the company. And what are the things that would help them to better perform in their task? Well, we've already talked about at the very beginning this roll up of AI and how it's making such an impact. You can actually use AI as part of your building process to ramp up your teams to know how to utilize these things well within the company. Amp, ramp. Use AI to draft, not decide. Run your content through the three filters. Refine with the Hourglass framework. So here's the basic structure of how to actually utilize the things I've talked about so far. Okay. Now I want to pull back from this and basically open up the floor. I wanted to leave plenty of room to answer questions. So what are some questions from the community?
Presentation. So, oh, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, there we go. All right. First of all, let me just say I love your graphics.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
very, very cool. Very, very cool. All right, so let me look at some of the questions that where's the interesting question? How do you determine a hallucination? I believe they're referring to the AI hallucinations.
So here's the funny thing about hallucination is by definition, everything that AI creates is a creation. The more that it can hallucinate and create is actually, it means it's doing its job. It's coming up with a fresh way to do things. So a hallucination for us, though, is anything that we don't want it to have in the information that it's providing. In other words, like if you asked your kids, I raised, my wife and I have 8 kids between us. If when they were little and I was to ask them, how did this lamp get broken? And they start telling me some story about the guy who broke in the house and broke the lamp, like, okay, this is crazy. Well, this is sort of what AI likes to do is it likes to come up with something and it wants to appeal to you. It wants to give you the thing it thinks you're after. In this case, one of the things we want to try to do is refine the way we ask the question and define specifically what it is we're wanting to get back. This is the way you can help refine the problems that where hallucinations can come up. We want the full creativity that AI can give us, but we need to constrain it.
Okay. Okay. Another question. Just a reminder, everyone, please send your questions into the Q&A section. When I look in the Q&A, I see old questions. What do you determine? It's important to keep the human in the process, a human in the loop.
Yes.
What do you use? What criteria do you use to determine what will be automated and what will remain human?
That's a great question. The things that you can do that the AI can't do is the primary piece. And this goes back to the photography group that I'm working with and trying to help them better understand. They come in and they're like, okay, so this is how I define myself as a camera. Well, now that's great, but that has a limited shelf life. You think about this in photography. When you've got a picture being taken, you start with you figure out where you want to take the shot, how you're going to compose the shot, what the lighting's going to be like, what your settings are on the camera. Then you take a picture. It's one snap, one little press, and then you've got a digital image or film. Then the next thing is the processing of that image. All the decisions that are made to make it the way you want it to look. Now AI can help fast track a lot of that. Maybe you've seen a picture that you really liked, and Ann Leibovitz, we love the way she creates her images. Okay, so then I can use AI to ramp me to become a better photographer. How do I shoot pictures like Ann Leibovitz? What kind of camera does she use? How does she stage her camera and her settings? Teach me so that I can be better at what I'm doing. We find ways to utilize our human self the most that we possibly can. AI, it just helps us get to those things faster and better. When I'm trying to write a long article, I write Substack articles every day on AI. And in that, I'll spend a lot of time going to my different tools, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, and do a lot of research. And then from that, I'll pull from it, like doing a research paper back when I was in high school or college. And you can take that clump of information and say, okay, here's all this information I've got. And you can use a tool like Notebook LM. It's a really cool tool. You can dump all this information that you've pulled from, and it'll actually generate a number of formats that you can work from, even creating an audio podcast. So you can take that information and then refine it and then add you to the story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah, Notebook LM is a great tool. Shout out to Brian Fink who
Yeah.
gave me to that tool. I got an idea. Want to bounce off of you just to sort of see what you think of it. There is always, well, there has been and still is, and probably always will be a concern of AI taking someone's function away or taking a job away, even taking so many tasks away
Right.
to the point where they're no longer needed full time. And we've talked about hallucinations. We talked about the need for humans in the loop and so forth. What do you think of the idea of having, for lack of a better word, a fire drill, where you have a day where people are told not to use AI to do their job? Reason being, what if AI goes awry and there's a glitch in the system and it no longer works? I've seen reports. I think MIT report this recently about how using AI too much dulls your brain senses. You start to, and I know you start to lose your skill. When I look at my phone,
Yeah.
I don't remember anybody's phone number. I've been using the contacts so much. So all that to say, I'm being too verbose. What do you think about the idea of viewing a non-AI day, just so people can keep their skills sharp on how to do things manually? Does that make sense, or is that
It
crazy?
does. I mean, this is the thing. When I ran my agency and you have
Mhm.
designers coming in doing a logo, do not start the logo in Illustrator because what you're doing is you're going to go with the default fonts. You're going to go with the default design elements that's there. I want you to start with having an idea first and then using the tools to accomplish it. In the same way, I think this is the way we should approach working with AI is don't jump right in because it's available. Actually step back for a second and put some human thought into the process. Then let AI come in where it's appropriate. It's just like, sending an email. Great. We're used to emails, no problem. But if you're dealing with 1,000 emails a day and most of it's junk mail, hey, you can use Google Gemini, filter out the email, find all the junk mail and cut it out of my phone, out of my computer. So I'm not dealing with it every day. There's ways that we can utilize the tools to better the things we're trying to do. And I like the idea of don't start with the tool first. Let the tool be what's here. Let the human be primary. And I saw another question real fast. What are your thoughts on Altman saying that the internet is now running itself, meaning that humans are being
Yeah,
removed? So
good
here's
question.
something really fascinating with this thing. It'd be great to do a show of hands almost on this, but how many people within the past week have actually gone to a specific web address? And I don't mean doing a Amazon purchase or going to Netflix. I mean literally finding and searching for a specific web address for your solution. And most of us don't do that anymore. We go do a Google search and then Google also will give us a summary of the answer that we're looking for or tell us directly how to get to that thing, even if it's searching for pizza. We don't go to websites like we once did. So there is a change in how the internet's being utilized. And I think businesses are going to see this. It's going to be an amalgamation of all the content that you put out being collected and resourced with the AI. So we'll use, instead of a Google search like we've been doing it, it's going to soon be an AI based search that's going to pull all the information and summarize it for you. So that means it's really important that you put out good content, that we all become content producers, and we're putting our voice to the things that's important to what we're trying to say, and especially for businesses. Let's see, I think we're probably wrapping up on time. Is there any other questions before we go here? Do I need to move it to the next?
Well, you know what? I'll just, before we do that, I'll just piggyback on what you just said, because what you said reminded me of an article I read recently on LinkedIn from pal of mine, Shannon Pritchett, where she talked about generative engine optimization, which is basically SEO for LLMs,
Yes.
you know, and how important it is in general, but how increasingly is important for your employer brand. The way ChatGPT, for example, will optimize your site or your career site
Right.
when someone does a search on whatever. Very interesting there, for
Yeah.
sure. I think we have time for one more quick question. If I see one more in here, could be answered quickly. Not sure can be answered quickly from what I can tell. I want to refer people over to the Q&A session room. If you have additional questions that you'd like to ask, um, meet Brian over there in the session room and he can answer your question there in real time. For everyone else, we're going to take a break now, but we'll be back in 5 minutes with another speaker. Hold on to your hats. It's going to be good.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Brian.